Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rob Pirani. I'm the director of the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary program here at the Hudson River Foundation, and welcome to our final keynote speaker and the last session of our 2021 conference. I know many of you have been participating all week, and we've had a great series of panels and workshops, and I know I've learned a lot and heard a lot of great perspectives, and I hope you have too. Just a couple of housekeeping things, and then I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Nicole Miller. First of all, please mute yourself. As you saw, we are doing this on Zoom. So when it comes time for the interactive part of the program this afternoon, we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak and listen respectively. So please mute yourself. When we launch the conversation, you can raise your hand and Nicole or I will recognize you and unmute you, or feel free to put your comment in the chat and we can read it off for you. If you're having technical issues, please let us know in the chat and we'll try to get right back to you to make sure you're able to participate. So with that, let me introduce Nicole Miller, who's gonna be the leader of this session. Nicole is a leader in the environmental justice and environmental community in New Jersey and around the world. She is the principal of NMN Consulting. She's a leader on the Newark Environmental Commission and Newark DIG, and she's co-chair of Jersey Waterworks, a great collaborative that HAP is also proud to be part of. Nicole.
Always. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It is my great pleasure to introduce United States Representative Tom Malinowski. Representative Malinowski represents New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. He has served as director on President Clinton's National Security Council and as the chief advocate for Human Rights Watch, where he led the bipartisan campaign to end the use of torture by the Bush administration. Representative Malinowski served as Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor under the Obama administration, where he helped lead America's fight for human rights around the world. Representative Malinowski is a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where last year he led the successful reauthorization of the National Estuary Program. Thank you. He has most recently played a critical role in advancing the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act just signed by President Biden and the proposed Build Back Better Act. Please join me in welcoming U.S. Representative Tom Malinowski. Okay, so it looks like Representative Malinowski has not yet joined us. Okay, so we will start with, while we're waiting, we do have contingencies. He is currently on the floor managing several things at one time. There's an important vote happening. So he will come in when he's able, but we will start. Isabel, can we launch one of the polls to start? Our plan, just to fill you in, is to have the congressman speak and then to have some discussion about funding and strategy. So the first poll question should be on your screen, where this is just a sort of like an audience read question. Where do you work? Who are you representing? Please choose the most appropriate option. I'll give a few seconds for that. Okay, it looks like we're at about 76% participation. All right, mostly we have conservation or environmental organization folks. No one from the utility has owned up. And no community-based organizations. University representation, federal, state, or local governments. Excellent. I think we can go on to poll number 2. So poll 2 is what climate infrastructure need and or investment is most important to you and to your work? Please just choose one.
If you wanted to.
Okay, so we paused the poll because we have a congressman here. Welcome, Congressman Malinowski. Looks like you had to go outside to find a quiet place. That's sad.
Hey, Nicole, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So, yeah, you know, I'm just in front of a random building in Washington, D.C. So just let me know when you guys are ready.
We are ready. We've already introduced you. And so
What?
everyone is primed to hear from you.
Okay, I just walked off the House floor where we cast a vote, and I've got another one in about 10 minutes. But really happy to be with you guys and for inviting me to give the keynote speech, which we didn't used to be able to do from the steps of the Capitol, but thanks to massive disruption of human society plus really great technology, we get to do this. And of course, just thank you to all of the incredible organizations and scientists and community members who've joined you this week to talk about how we can improve the water quality and ecological integrity of our nation's most significant estuaries. It's hard to overstate, and I know I don't need to overstate with this group just how important estuaries are to the broader marine ecology. They are often referred to as the nurseries of the sea. This is how the subject was first introduced to me, because obviously of the vast array of marine animals who spend the early parts of their lives in them. Estuaries also are stopover sites for migratory animals, whether duck or geese or salmon. They filter out pollutants from rivers and streams before they flow into the ocean. They protect inland areas from flooding with their broad and shallow waters able to absorb sudden storm surges, which is particularly important for my constituents in New Jersey who've been through so much in the last few years as a result of climate change. So they are really the key natural infrastructure that protects our communities in New Jersey and in many other parts of the country from flood risk. And of course, as you all know, they're also economic drivers for communities across the country that rely on fishing, on tourism, and on recreation. In short, estuaries are pretty cool. And so as a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Subcommittee on Water Resources and the Environment, I've had the opportunity to play a small role in trying to protect and strengthen our vast and complex estuary ecosystems, and in so doing, preserving the natural beauty and security of the state of New Jersey. Now, I know the theme of your conference this week was Waterway Stories, water quality, access, and community. So you all have heard and experienced this week conversations around water quality and access and how we can communicate the importance of these issues to the people we serve. I've tried to do that in Congress, working to spark those very conversations. And with the help of the New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program, and all of your individual voices, I think we're making some progress. One good example is the bipartisan bill that I introduced in my first term, the Protect and Restore America's Estuaries Act, which was enacted into law this January. President Trump signed it on the day that we impeached him, which leads me to think that yes, you can protect the Constitution and estuaries at the same time. That was a good day, I thought, for us in more ways than one. The bill would not have been possible without the help of a lot of people on this call, and I particularly want to single out Rob Pirani and the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program for your leadership. The bill makes a number of important improvements to the National Estuary Program. First of all, it authorizes doubling the funding for the NEP's 28 estuaries of national significance, including the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program. It ensures that the management plans governing these nationally significant estuaries consider the effects of recurring extreme weather events, i.e. climate change, and that they develop and implement appropriate adaptation strategies. The bill expands eligibility for NEP grants to organizations working to address issues like stormwater runoff and coastal resiliency and accelerated land loss issues. And it requires the NEP management plans to develop and implement strategies to increase local awareness about the ecological health and water quality of estuaries. So that was a really, really important win that we had together. And again, I want to thank you so much for all of your help in getting the bill across the finish line. I've also been really happy to co-sponsor the New York, New Jersey Watershed Protection Act, which, as you know, invests even more federal resources in protecting and restoring the waterways that flow across New Jersey and into the New York, New Jersey Harbor. What that bill does specifically is to direct the Secretary of Interior to build on and coordinate restoration activities at all levels of government. It establishes a program to coordinate restoration and to award grants to help fund restoration projects. And it authorizes $50 million annually through 2027 to accomplish those goals. And then finally, I think you guys probably read, we had another little legislative success in the Congress in the last couple of weeks. After a lot of work, we passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, a bill that will benefit New Jersey and New York, our entire region in countless ways. It was a messy process, which is not unusual in the annals of Congress when you have to get 535 people together on something. We have an evenly divided Congress between Democrats and Republicans. So it wasn't easy, but the accomplishment, I think, was very, very great, and it will change this country for the better. And one of the things we do in what we affectionately refer to as the BIF is to invest in projects that can withstand the impacts of climate change. In New Jersey, we've got to level with the fact that the tropical storm Ida, that storms like Ida will become even more frequent, and address the urgent need for flood mitigation along the Waterway and rivers that through infrastructure that can be resilient in future storms. The bill provides around $50 billion nationally, the biggest investment in our history, to strengthen our resilience to those kinds of extreme weather events and to protect our communities from the flooding that results. I represent towns like Cranford in New Jersey that are hit with 100-year storms every 5 or 6 years. And people are sick and tired of it, and they are looking for solutions. And we are going to be bringing solutions with the resources that this bill provides. The bill also, while doing that, it also will help us reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that have led to these extreme, to the climate change that creates these extreme events. It expands access to clean drinking water. It helps us build up a clean power grid so that Americans buying electric cars can have the confidence that that they can be charged and that the grid will support the electrification of our economy. And we invest on top of that 50 billion, about $41 billion over 5 years to improve water infrastructure across our states and ensure that clean, safe drinking water is a right in all of our communities. And this week, probably on Friday, if we stick to our schedule, we're going to pass the next big bill that we've been talking about for the last few months, the Build Back Better bill, which takes on climate change in even more profound way, a $555 billion investment over 10 years in combating the climate crisis. By far, the most profound and fundamental investment that we have made in that direction. And that includes about $28 billion in strategic conservation investments to encourage conservation of soil, water, air, and other related natural resources, and a little over $2 billion in wastewater infrastructure. So that investment in particular, I think, will be of significant help for the national, for our national estuary programs, where problems like urban sewage and stormwater runoff and other excess nutrients are, as you all know, largely responsible for degrading our water quality and estuarine waters and in destroying our delicate ecosystems. So through all of those legislative efforts, I just feel incredibly privileged to be your voice here in Washington. And I will promise to you to continue to be that voice, to keep on fighting to protect the waterways that New Jerseyans and people all across our country depend on. So thank you again to Rob. Thank you to the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program for bringing us here together this week. Thank you to all who joined this year's conference. Thank you for holding us in Washington accountable and for your dedication to making sure that we preserve these foundations of the natural beauty of our state and of the American economy. There's a lot more work to be done. I urge all of you to continue this great collaboration and communication with us to make sure the progress continues. Thank you all so very, very much.
Thank you very much, Representative Malinowski. So we thank the Congressman. He had to immediately run. As he mentioned, he was between votes. So that's exciting news that we might be seeing movement on Build Back Better by the end of the week. I mean, fingers crossed. That would be great news because it's on everybody's sort of mouth, like the funds that are potentially coming into towns, to states and towns everywhere. There are already existing funds, the ARPA funds that we know about. There are the Investment Act funds and now Build Back Better. So there are a lot of opportunities for pitfalls, unfortunately. So where are those funds going? Let me see if I can switch this. Yes, where are those funds going? Where will people be spending their time and energy? Those are all things that we want to consider. So we want to hear from you. This is the interactive portion. Since we could not keep the Congressman for the entire time of the keynote, we're like, why don't we just open it up and get a discussion going? And so that's our opportunity. Isabel's going to pop up that second poll. So we already heard from folks for the first poll on who they are, who's in the room. And so now we want to get that second poll up so that we can discuss What are the climate and infrastructure needs or investment that is most important to you and to your work, right? So we did get some people started. Here with the poll. It's hard to pick one. I heard from Rosanna, it's hard to pick one, right? It is. Don't worry. For the next poll, for the last one, we let you pick 3. You're welcome. But just for one. Okay, so I don't know if we can let any more people answer this one. Like it says that it's 100% answered because it was from the previous time. So it looks like we have ecosystem management is a big winner. Managing stormwater and inland flooding, preparing for coastal flooding and sea level rise. And then we got 1 vote for advancing renewable energy and securing energy resiliency. No votes there from the 24 who were able to answer for transportation upgrades and resiliency and port and maritime infrastructure resiliency. Very interesting. Oh, and then the other was listed in chat. And in the chat, I can't find it again. Oh, there I am. The other that was listed in the chat is invest in environmental, specifically climate change, education of our young people, include investment in training and green tech jobs for youth. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the third poll up. And remember all of this because we'll be discussing it. And feel free, as Rob mentioned earlier, to sort of raise your hand. We can show you where that is. Raise your hand if you want to speak, but then also you can put your answers into the chat there as well for us to review. So poll question number 3 is, what are the biggest challenges toward realizing the opportunity? So the previous one were what were the most important investment opportunities, and then what are the biggest challenges posed by the federal and infrastructure funds that we have coming in? You can pick 3. Please just pick 3. I like seeing the numbers come in, seeing how it changes real quick on my end. A big winner up front is understanding community needs and perspectives. Capacity is overtaking government capacity. We have 22 out of 32 participated, 68% participation. So we need more folks to come on and answer the poll. This is interesting. Remember, please just pick 3. If you pick all of them, you're going to throw off our very scientific data analysis that we're doing here. Very scientific. So it looks like we're at 83% participation. It's the trust system. It's the trust system, Rosanna. We would not know if you pick more than 3. We're asking you to just pick 3. So it looks like at 84% participation, we have understanding needs of community and understanding of community needs and perspectives, government, federal, state, and local capacity to administer the funding, and consensus on which projects to fund and how they should be, how we should proceed. A close second is permitting approvals or other regulatory constraints. And then the lowest one, which was ensuring local workforce training and employment. Oh, that's interesting. So it looks like we're holding at 84% there of people having taken the poll. All right, so as for the conversation, I think we're done with that. Let's close that poll. So as for all important goals, agreed. Carol mentioned that they're all important. It's just important. It's difficult to choose 3. Well, part of the problem is that too often people are thinking about one thing or the other when we really want to be thinking about cohesive wholes. How can we accomplish all of those things? And all of those challenges are real challenges that we need to collectively find solutions for. So the ones that were highlighted before, that were the top highlighted ones, sort of understanding community needs, that will change. We have, nearly 600 municipalities. We have different perspectives, different environmental realities, different population. We're a very diverse population in terms of economics, in terms of ethnicities. Sort of North Jersey, South Jersey, we have two very large metropolitan centers that kind of draw energy from local concerns, capacity at the federal, state, and at the local level. All these things need to be considered, right? And so when we think about the priorities and opportunities for the legislation, and again, we're talking about already existing ARPA funds that are currently in the state that have not been allocated. We're talking about the Infrastructure Act funds that were just signed recently, and the potential Build Back Better funds that hopefully we'll get good news on this week. When we think about those opportunities, what in the legislation, especially considering that the legislation for Build Back Better is still live, it's very dynamic. What do we need to consider in those? And if for those of you who have already sort of gone through the many pages of the infrastructure bill, what are those considerations? Does anyone have anything they want to offer on that with regard to priorities and opportunities in the legislation that we need to be mindful of or really seize? Okay, if you don't know how, you can raise your hand by going to along the bottom of your screen. There's a button that says reactions, and there's an option there to raise your hand if you would like to if you'd like to say something. You can also put a comment in the chat, and Rob and I will work together to make sure that all the voices are heard from. So again, I'll go back to my question. What are the priorities and or opportunities in the legislation, the various legislation that we need to be the most mindful of? So did anything stand out for anyone in the legislation that we really are like, okay, this is an opportunity, or this is a concern, or this is something that we should be mindful of? We should also consider what community leaders can be doing to take advantage of the opportunity. So what are some suggestions that people might have for taking advantage of these opportunities, especially on the local level?
Maybe just to prompt everybody a little bit more, I think we were talking earlier that this is, I think happily, not a theoretical question, right? Like the federal agencies within HAP and outside of HAP, along with state and local government, are all thinking about how best to spend the money that'll be flowing from Washington and getting ready in different ways for that. And I think it's something that both the Harbor and Estuary program, and I know the individual organizations and entities represented on the call are also working on. So great to get your voice in the discussion, and it's something that the Estuary program, along with Jersey Waterworks and other collaborations around the region, are focused on.
Yes, I also see here, Rosanna put a point there about the local workforce training one being low because there are sort of existing frameworks to make that happen, imperfect as they may be. And so it's not so much a challenge, but a challenge more on accountability to ensure that this happens. But then you get conflicting priorities, right? So there might be, and that is actually reflected in other challenges, right? So there are frameworks in place. There are absolutely systems in place for local workforce development, but are we talking about long-term jobs? Are we talking about sort of union level wages? Are we talking about positions that stretch beyond short-term short-term growth and also livable wage. But then also, are those considered roadblocks by people who want to be able to just sort of come in quickly and do the work? Is the training considered a roadblock? What are those, that balancing there, that we want people to prioritize local workforce training, but then also not view it as, oh, I'm sort of stymieing my effectiveness. And so I see here, Liz is answering Rosanna saying, I'll be honest, I didn't pick it because I feel like before encountering workforce as a challenge, the other three challenges came up first: funding, agency capacity, and prioritizing projects. So until you can get a beat on funding, until you can sort of deal with the capacity questions and the prioritization conundrum, right? Like which projects deserve the funding, you can't address those other issues. Great investment and more training. Chrissy Word mentioned that she does think that the programs does need to be greater investment and training in those programs to make sure that they are, really serving the population. So then, but what about data?
Chrissy, maybe I'll put Chrissy on the spot a little bit. As an educator, like, are there ways that the agencies and collaborations like HEP can do a better job of sort of building that pipeline between the education work you do and the students and young people you're in touch with, and getting them thinking about green careers and being part of this investment?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Rob. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I just as a trainer, City Parks Foundation hosts over 100 high school and college interns every year. And we really struggle with two things: funding, of course, finding funders to really continue to make these robust programs and grow them. But secondly, it is the pipeline and getting organizations within New York City to develop programs within that invite young people to come in, especially BIPOC youth, to come in and train within their ranks. I think that there is the misconception that young people are difficult perhaps to train, or we don't really have the capacity to do this, or especially when it comes to high school youth, they wouldn't be able to do what we're doing here. And we've proven all of those things false in different ways. And so we are really looking for more partners, especially in the green tech industry, especially in the maritime industry, that will work with us and help us to develop training that is suitable for their needs, because youth laborers are passionate and they will work hard and they learn fast.
Yes. And, we need to train them because they're the ones who really need to be, to sort of see that nexus, right? Like, how can we, what are the innovative solutions that we really need to move on to a more resilient future, right? So one word really there captured me, and that's capacity, right? And that's a thing that has come up in many conversations. As Rob mentioned, I'm co-chair of Jersey Waterworks Steering Committee, and we've been having a lot of conversations about capacity, about cutting red tape, about sort of defeating bureaucratic sort of challenges. But how is a general question to the room? How can our federal, state, and especially our local agencies, I'm talking EAP, the EPA, I'm talking DEP, I'm talking your local municipalities, how can they best prepare for this work? That's getting the funding to the entities that need it best. That's building up, as you say, a workforce that's making sure that the community is engaged in that. Like, really, it's a capacity issue. We're not really ready. Rob and I were talking earlier, and we shared analogies about, I use the lottery, right? It's sort of like being unprepared to win a massive lottery and rob you an inheritance. You know, this is a one-time thing. You really can't expect to win a $300 million lottery multiple times in your life, right? So what are you going to do with that? You can't just go start spending. You really need to have a plan. So I hear Margie in the chat has said, in addition to capacity, is long-term stability of programs. Okay, Margie, do you want to come on and elaborate on that?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think that it's very difficult to think beyond the immediate. Like we're constantly, I'm sure Christy's in the same boat. We're writing grants. We're trying to think about how can we keep up with our immediate needs. You know, let's not even think about growing a program. Let's just think about being able to offer that program in an ongoing way. And so you're really kind of patchworking things together. And that means that, I mean, we're all creative, we think on our feet, and we all work double time to keep these things going, but it's impossible to really keep that up without understanding that you've got some kind of a foundation. And I think that young people that are working with us also recognize that. I mean, they're all about, you know, they've talked actually at length about we need to do a better job of letting other people know about this program, which is great. But if you don't know that program's going to be able to be there in another year or 2 years, that seems a bit disingenuous. So that's kind of what I'm speaking about.
Very true, very true. And that has come up recently in conversations I've been having about our Chief Sustainability Officer, Natalie Agosto-Filion, was talking about getting funding. She hesitates to seek out funding for which she does not have a sort of long-term plan for, right? Because she doesn't want to have a program that people get really excited about for 1 or 2 years, and then the funding dries up, and then that program can't continue, right? Because that reads as a failure for her. So how can we do that? I see Isabel earlier had mentioned government capacity, but then also making it easy for those funds to trickle down, if you will. So how do the funds get from the state into the local municipalities and into projects on the ground? What's that sort of quick turnaround? We have iBank, we have pass-through grant funding, but then we also have challenged municipalities that might be at the limits of their ability to take loans. They might have poor credit ratings. They might have, you know, just capacity issues where they don't have someone to be able to write grants for them or to be able to seek out that funding. I live in Newark, and we are thankfully the largest city in the state, and we have some capacity to be able to help the municipality actually attain those funds, but a smaller municipality might not have that flexibility, right? So how are we making it easy? And I see Neha, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Neha is saying, what are some of the specific skills that are needed to build the capacity? What skills should we be focused on in training? And that goes back to Chrissy's point, right? So not only just having people brought in, but being very directive in how we're encouraging their training to be most effective. So Neha, did you want to, if I'm pronouncing that correct, please let me know. Did you want to come on and share more or ask?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. It's pronounced Neha, but it was a good try. So yeah, I was curious because Chrissy, you talked a lot about how we need to, your high school programs and how we need to increase the capacity, but I think I'm curious because I know in the environmental sphere, like there is a big push to like encourage people to be trained in STEM, and like that is great, but that's only one part of it, right? There's also like other skills like being able to operate with lots of partnerships or partners, like coordination, and like there's like it's pretty much, I feel like every skill can be valuable, but how do we I guess specify, or how do we pinpoint certain ones to like help our training, right? And also help the gifts of the students that come in, right? Like we don't want to say like, you know, these are the skills that you need that you don't have, but like what are the things that you're really good at and that can really help us like make a healthier environment, right? Make the environment that we want to see. So yeah, I was just curious for those folks who are kind of running those programs, and also people who see the openings for those skills too.
Can I quickly respond to that? Would that be okay? I go back to what Rob said, which is in terms of partnership, we need to hear from our corporate and governmental, even nonprofit partners, what is needed in terms of the work that you're doing. You know, we've started a budding relationship with the New York City young professionals in energy, and we hope that that relationship is really going to help to inform us what's needed. Where can we be targeting our efforts to make sure that our students are getting onto tracks that are meaningful and going to be able to obtain work within those fields. So what's needed, but we need to hear that from partners. So we need more partnership. We need more collaboration from the organizations that are doing the work in New York City.
Awesome, great, thank you. Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And the point, Neha, that you and Chrissy bring up leads me to one of the shorter lines that we had in our poll. Was there about the data and knowledge gaps? So in our sort of challenges, that was not considered a big challenge that we needed to overcome. So that's interesting to me. So do you, like, the room generally feels like we have the answers, we know what needs to be there, but at the same time, knowing community needs was one of the top ones, right? So that's obviously a gap there of knowledge, but sort of technical gaps. So how to be more resilient, but we don't always agree, right? So then we come to the point of which projects do we focus on, right? So how can we sort of like coalesce around the fact that we have a fair amount of data, we know a fair amount about climate change projections, we know about some of the needs that we'll have along our coast and in our riverine areas and our watersheds, et cetera, how we can sort of fix these problems. We have some funds, but then how do we meet the community's needs, meet those sort of like coast? I know here in New Jersey, we have flooding, street flood, local and street flooding. We have CSO work that is very much can be not necessarily focused on those street flooding issues, right? So that's something where the community had to say, look, Newark, we want you to focus on this. This is important, not just the CSO issue. So how can we bring that data that we have, that we feel very comfortable with those areas where there are question marks? What are your thoughts on that?
I think
That's nice.
I'll answer your question, Nicole.
Thank you.
But because I think, you know, and I have to say, maybe my Hudson River Foundation colleagues weren't voting so much on that data gap question, but or knowledge gap question. You know, I think it does speak to the idea that you know, we have data and we have knowledge. It's just not being brought to the right. It's not being brought into forums where people can utilize it, right? That's what it's a translation problem. It's a dissemination problem. So just an observation more than anything else, but interesting.
So who's the audience that you're imagining there? It's not getting to the legislators and the policymakers, it's not getting to the community, it's not getting to the water professionals who are actually out there digging in the ground. Who is not getting the message? Everybody?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, to me, like, just based on the poll, for sure, kind of community needs and perspectives, you know, if that's a top need, you know, making sure that the community gets that data and that information and knowledge so that they can provide a perspective seems to me to be kind of an important aspect to this.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, I am going to turn the meeting back over to Rob. Thank you all for those who participated in the poll and in the discussion. Again, thank you to Representative Malinowski for carving out some time in his day to be with us for just a few short minutes. And I do want to, of course, invite you all to, I would be remiss if I did not invite you all to the Jersey Waterworks Conference, which will be in December, from December 8th through the 10th. I can dig up a link and put it into the chat for everyone to attend, where we continue this conversation on water infrastructure, specifically water infrastructure, water funding. What are we going to do about capacity building, all of those things. So thank you all for allowing me to moderate, and I'll turn it back over to Rob.
Well, thank you, Nicole, for stepping in and doing it in today, and obviously with a quick change of plans in terms of the session. So thanks for being a professional and rolling with it. And thank you all for participating. We really appreciate you being here with us this afternoon, as well as all week. It's been a great conference. If you missed any of the sessions, they are being posted as quickly as we can. So you can come back to the website and see what you missed. You can continue to contribute to the community board, and that'll be up for more days to keep the conversation going. And just to reinforce what Nicole said, Jersey Waterworks Conference is coming up in a couple of weeks, and also a great session to talk about these and many other issues. And last but not least, just a big thank you to Isabel and Rosanna and Liz and everyone from the staff here at the foundation who's really made the conference go. If you're interested in joining with the Harbor and Estuary program as we go forward, there's plenty of opportunities to do so. First and foremost, the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting is coming up, I believe, December 10th, and that's a great forum to continue to be engaged. So thank you so much, and we'll see you hopefully in person soon.